Hello, everybody, and welcome to another fantastic episode of Truth Wanted. I am your host, as always, Objectively Dan. This is the live call-in show where we talk about what people believe and why, live every Fridays at 7 p.m. Central Time. Joining me this week is another special guest from Tinseltown. First one from Tinseltown, I think. Hopefully we'll get more, but it is John Lancie. John Lancie, welcome to Truth Wanted.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, and so some of you guys might be wondering, what's a guy like John Lancie doing on Truth Wanted? Well, in case you're not familiar, John Lancie is an actor. He has been acting for longer than I've been alive, but he's probably most famously known for his role as Q in Star Trek: The Next Generation, amongst other projects, including Breaking Bad. Which is pretty cool. But John is a bit of a secular activist, I would say, right?
I would say that, especially now that the times need it more.
Yeah, and so most recently, you did a speech for the Secular Student Alliance conference this summer, which I did not get to attend, but I'm kind of jealous that I didn't get to see it, but I get to talk to you now, which is pretty cool. And you've been talking at secular events for a couple of years now, which is really neat. So I guess I just want to start off, like, have you always been kind of secular? Like, what's your story with religion and everything? How did you grow up?
My story with religion is pretty simple, and that is that I was never religious. I went to school, to a school that was a private school. Actually, before that, I went to a school which is, what is it? Where the kids are going to Sunday school.
There yeah.
That shows you how little I am. And I remember even at the time when they were talking about, Jonah living in a whale and things like that, all that stuff, that early stuff that you get. I just thought, it's just not possible. I mean, I just don't believe that people don't live in whales. So I just never bought it. And I mostly had a sense that I was being manipulated. And that never went away. So I, unlike a lot of people, yourself included, I never went down that road. And then when one became, 20 years old or 25 or 30 years old, felt betrayed and felt that they had been, told things that were essentially not true. And I never went down that road. I just was not interested in that kind of religious education. I'm very interested in the history of it. I find it fascinating. I probably know a lot more about Bible studies than most people do, but I'm not a believer in a God, any God. But I am certainly a believer in the humanistic elements of where a lot of religions feel that it's important to be kind and good to each other, to be charitable. I believe those are things that I ascribe to, but not religious elements.
So some humanistic values, some humanist values, maybe.
Absolutely.
Right. So, when I think of Hollywood, right? When I think of actors and actresses and people in that scene, I guess there's a reputation of some people believe it in some kind of crazy stuff, whether it's like Scientology, whether you're a big believer in Goop or whatever, Gwyneth Paltrow's thing. There's some kind of out there stuff. So like you've been around that world a little bit. Do you find that you're kind of the odd man out in that scene, or what's it kind of like?
I mean, the thing is this, is that I'm a working actor. I'm not an actor who has, I've achieved a certain amount of notoriety, but not at the level in which you're talking about. Most working actors, especially most working actors who come out of the theater, we're pretty conservative people. We show up on time. We do our work. We are perfectionists often in terms of making sure that it's done, as good as possible. Our profession has a lot to do with being practical And I know that's very contrary to the way in which people think about, well, there's the Charlie Sheens and the, whatever, Gwyneth Paltrow and what have you. But for the most part, most actors are working people. They're working people.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. That makes sense. Because, like, if you have something that's kind of wild and out there, that's probably going to get you more attention, right? And if you just are kind of whatever about it, I mean, nobody's going to pay attention to that, right? So I can see how maybe that kind of...
Well, also, the fact of the matter is that most people think of these things as being private. It's the... and for... So we just don't, most actors, certainly the actors that I know of, we don't talk about this stuff very often.
Yeah.
We are generally socially liberal, which is to say that, and that's because we have grown up with and work with many different types of people in a very diverse environment on many different stories. Where our job is to assume and to wonder what it would be like to be that person or that person or that person. So it begins to open you up a little bit. It makes you cognizant that there's another worldview than your own. But certainly most of the actors that I know of, a few of them who are very religious are not cramming it down my throat or anybody else's throat. And we just have good, regular conversations like most people do. And at the same time, you've got some wackadoodles.
Sure, yeah, but that's the perfect segue to my next question then, because past couple of years at least, from what I've seen, you've been doing the secular activism stuff. You've been talking, giving speeches. So what got you inspired to do that?
What got me inspired to do that is that I got hired to do a job called, which was to go around the country with the Scopes monkey trial, the actual trial transcripts to the Scopes monkey trial. Ed Asner played William Jennings Bryan, and I played Darrow. And we did the college circuit, and those colleges have major theaters all around the country, and it's a great circuit to be on. And I thought that I was doing a show which was essentially like a historical show. I mean, it was a trial that took place in 1925. It was the first trial ever to be broadcast on radio. It was about evolution, which, as far as I'm concerned, is a non-issue. I mean, they carry on about the conspiracy or the fact that
John,
other people...
you'd be surprised with the people I talk to. It's still an issue for some people.
Yeah, I know. But this was, to me at the time, this was all very sedate stuff.
Sure.
And
sure.
So in any case, we go out on stage and we are performing the actual trial transcripts where it's, and there's a narrator who's explaining a little bit about what's going on right now. And then you would see scenes of it and what have you. And that's when we were hit with people in the audience screaming and yelling and carrying on. And most of them seemed to be, or at least the ones that I remember, it was all about, what is it, October 23rd, 4004 BC, which I had never heard about. I mean, really, what's that? That's the day the world was created. Well, I now am fascinated because all of a sudden I'm playing to an audience who usually audiences are rather quiet and they laugh or they cry or they applaud, but that's about it. I had never played to audiences which are screaming at you.
Yeah.
And that was my introduction. And I at these colleges, we had to give lectures. So Ed would give a lecture at one college. He'd do a question and answer, and I would do one at the next college. And at this particular college, and it was in Nebraska, I finished the Q&A. There were about 100 kids, 120 kids in the classroom. I finished the Q&A, and I said, so thank you and stuff like that. And the teacher went, thank you. He said, I saw the show last night, and I thought it was really great. How many of you saw it? and maybe about 3 or 4 kids raised their hands. Now, I'm supposed to be talking to a group of 150 kids at a major university who want to be actors. So, we got, excuse me, but there are a lot of like 9 or 10 really tip-top actors who performed last night. And if for no other reason than wanting to see the skill involved, you should have been there. But only 3 or 4 had gone. So I was like, oh, that's kind of strange, I'm thinking. And he saw that, and then he looked at me and he said, and he gave me one of these looks like, watch this. He said, listen, with a raise, putting your hands up in the air, how many of you believe the world was created October 23rd, 4004 BC at 10 o'clock in the morning? And about 80 out of 100 kids raised their hand.
Wow. And where was this at? This was in Texas.
This was at the University of Nebraska.
Nebraska. Excuse me. Okay. Yeah.
And I was shocked. It was shocking to me. And instead of going, God, what is so stupid? What does that mean? Oh my God. What happened is that I kind of looked down at my feet. I felt like the air had been pushed out of me. And mostly what happened is I went, oh my God, all the curiosity has just left the room. 500 years of curiosity, things that I wake up every day and look on the news going, oh, they discovered this, or they can see further into the universe, or somebody's discovered that frogs do, whatever. I just find, which I have found fascinating all my life, just simply went out the door.
Yeah.
When you kind of go, oh yeah, well, I don't know, 4004 BC, 10 o'clock in the morning, that's it. My world is set now. So I went back that night. I was going to, we had a show, and we were in the green room, and I'm talking to the rest of the actors. I'm telling them about this. And there was a girl there. There were a couple of college kids, very sweet, who, would help us set up and what have you. And there was one particular one from the night before who was very sweet. And let's call her Mary. And I said, oh, Mary, I told the story. And I said, Mary, would you have raised your hand? And she said, oh, yes, absolutely. And I said, why is that, Mary? And she said, well, because God is my bus driver.
What?
And I said, you know what, Mary, I don't know what is that supposed to mean? She said, it means that I can go to the back of my bus and party hardy because God is driving my bus.
Okay.
And I heard that as such an abdication of one's own personal responsibility coming from a 20-year-old who I thought, oh, no. And I have often thought about that Mary. Where is she now? Mary is, 40 years old now, or 35 years old. How many people have been driving her bus that she doesn't know about?
Yeah.
What have they been telling Mary, who is willing to just believe? Where is Mary now? So I began to get onto a circuit. The first place in which I spoke was at the Lincoln Memorial. There were, I don't know, 20 or 30,000 people there. And I spoke to them about that. And I said, we've got to be really concerned about this. It's not about believing. It's about kind of becoming dead upstairs in terms of what's going on. And you can be highly manipulated at that point. You can be told things that are not true. Intentionally not true, manipulated and controlled. And I don't mean like, some sort of Martian sort of way. I mean, just regular life.
Yeah.
So that's when I began to think, what can I do? And what I can do is to speak up.
Yeah, and all of what you're saying is really resonating with what we try to do here on Truth Wanted. Like, we want to question why people believe the things that they do, not because, I'm nosy, right? Or because, like, I'm really interested in what's making you tick, because real life is affected by the beliefs that you have, what you decide to do in your personal life, and how you set policies, whether that's for your community or for your nation. So I was pleasantly surprised when I found out that you were doing these talks and doing this kind of stuff, advocating for secularism. And recently you gave a talk about secular leadership to the Secular Student Alliance, which I thought was particularly interesting. Was there a particular reason why you wanted to talk about secular leadership for that conference, or?
Well, because my feeling is that those of you who are your age, who just left college, those who are going into college and what have you, you need to understand, my generation, even though I was at Woodstock, even though I was at Kent State, even though I spoke at the Senate and went into the White House to advocate about the Kent State killings and what have you, my generation, the generation that I am part of, has really done your generation a bad turn. We have let you down, seriously let you down. We have allowed stuff to take place that should not have taken place. The fact that whatever it is, 25, 27 little kids could be shot in a schoolroom and we didn't do anything about it. The fact that we have allowed, as far as I'm concerned, I mean, there's nothing about allowing this stuff, but I mean, all of this conspiracy stuff is bullshit, and it clouds one's ability to have critical thinking and also to understand what's going on. I have talked to people back when this was when was it? I don't know. 10 years ago, where somebody said to me, I want government out, keep government out of my Social Security. And you kind of go, you don't, that's really, you're not thinking.
Yeah.
And so it concerns me, this issue of believing, because people, it's a real easy way to just say, well, I believe. And that's sort of the end of the investigation.
Yeah, or just having faith. I just have faith that this is true.
I just have faith. And the thing is, we live in a much more complicated world than that. And people can take advantage of you really easily. And so it behooves you to spend the time to learn, to discover what's going on, not to only listen to one brand of quote news. And so it's all part and parcel. Critical thinking. It's all part and parcel of critical thinking.
Sure. Yeah, these kind of I just have faith, I just believe. These are the terminology that I've come to know them as. They're called thought-terminating cliches, and that's what people who study this say. It's a word or just a phrase out there that's supposed to indicate, all right, well, this is just the way it is. And let's not think about it anymore and just leave it as it is, right?
Yeah, I grew up at a time where if somebody had a religious belief, you were not supposed to ask them. You were not supposed to challenge them. And you kind of went, and even though you might think, well, I don't know, I mean, that doesn't make sense. If you were to say something like that, that would be considered impolite. However, once you move from the private in your home, you can believe what you want to believe, into the public square. And then those people would say, you would say to them, well, wait a minute, could you explain that? Oh, wait a minute, you cannot say that to me. I believe you are impinging on my beliefs. And you kind of go, no. You're in the public square now. So you have to explain, you have to prove.
Yeah. We can't make a policy on something. That's just how it is. Yeah, it's not a good way to run things. So I'm just happy to see that you're out there talking about this stuff, using your platform for, critical thinking. I don't know. Nobody can knock you for using your platform for critical thinking. I mean, that's just.
Think so. I don't think so. And I'm not I mean, as I keep on saying, I have friends who are very religious, but fabulous critical thinkers.
Mm.
You know, they don't. So it isn't like just because you're religious you can't think critically. I'm talking about that zone in the that little bit of the mindless zone, the 4004 BC zone,
right?
Where evidence over the years, that was a date that came up by Bishop Ussher back in 1653 or whatever it was, and we've moved on from there. So get real.
Get real. I love it. Well, folks, if you're tuning in and you missed some of the first part, I'm talking to, of course, John de Lancie, famous for multiple roles, probably most known for Star Trek. And we're about to take some calls. So if you haven't already, go ahead and call that number on the screen, because we do have some calls lined up and we're going to take them in just a second. But John, I did have one more question before we started getting into that. And we already talked about it before the show, and I know this annoys you, but I figured we should nip this on the bud just in case anybody wants to call in about it. Obviously, there is this thing going around called QAnon, and you happen to be known for playing a character called Q. So, like, the jokes there are kind of obvious. I guess I just want to get your take on that, because that's probably got to be pretty frustrating for you.
No, it isn't frustrating. I think that it's a sad commentary on where we are. Mm-hmm. I'm happy to stay as far away from those folks as possible. And they don't represent me or the character that I played and made very popular. It's actually contrary to all of that.
Yeah.
And, so that's about it.
Yeah. I got to point out, because somebody made the comment when we were advertising you're going to be on the show. This is the closest that God will ever be on Truth Wanted. Somebody made that joke, and I just thought that was funny. So I wanted to share that with you. But we're going to get to some calls. But before we do that, I just want to thank the lovely folks that donate on Patreon. As you guys know, this show is almost entirely produced by volunteers. And in order to fund this show, it comes from donations from folks like you. If you notice, I got this new chair. You can't be on YouTube without a good chair, right? I feel like that's the whole thing these days. So that was paid for by you guys. So thanks so much, those of you who donate on Patreon. If you want to become a patron of the show, it's patreon.com/truthwanted. You get your name in the credits, and you can get access to an ad-free version of the show as well. So thanks so much for you guys who donate on there. John, are you ready to take some calls?
I am ready to take some calls.
All right, let's do it. So we got some interesting ones here. I've been trying to decide what to go with first, but I think I want to talk to Skyler, who's calling in from Arkansas. Skyler, you're live on Truth Wanted. What's going on?
Oh, not much today. It's been pretty relaxing. Excited to be on air, especially with one of my favorite actors, just in general. I'm
awesome.
Excited to talk, but you were talking about secular leaders and such, and I was wondering if you guys thought it was possible that we could finally get some secular representation, whether it be an atheist or just simply a secular humanist or humanist at all, properly in either like a governor or a some such role, because we're definitely a growing, still a minority, but we're definitely growing, and we have no representation, and we have no way to really get across the ideas and help that we want to get across, just to help humanity as a whole. Not just, we're not here for our beliefs, we're here for others, to help. Genuinely help. Do you think we will ever be able to get to that point? We're just stuck, I feel.
John, do you want to go first on this?
I think it's not only do I think it's possible, I think it's going to for sure happen. I mean, you have to understand is that the the moral code that those of us who are secular go by is very, very similar to the moral code that supposedly the religious go by. And I dare say the evangelicals right now are showing themselves to be hypocritical in many things by the virtue that they have those associated themselves with Trump. I mean, I'm appalled by the level of lying that goes on. It's appalling. It's appalling. My sense of who we are, our moral sense of who we are, it has a really difficult time with all of this lying. You would think that the evangelicals would have a difficult time with all the lying, except guess what? They're getting what they want. Well, there's something kind of wrong about that. And I would love to be able to take all of that out of there. I believe in many of the things that they believe in, and I just don't associate it with an external force. I think of it as coming from me. I think of it as humanistic, and I don't find it to be dangerous in any way. I know that they do, but that's because they think that we're going after them, but we're not going after them. Just like you said, we're trying to do the right thing, to be good for all people. So I believe that people who are secular, it's difficult in a country which is as religious as this. But more and more, especially younger people, are becoming disenchanted with the way in which the evangelicals are carrying on right now, and they're losing people in droves. And so that, I think, is going to help generally have a population which is just less religious. If you go to Europe, great civilizations there that are doing very, very well. They're just not nearly as encumbered by all this religious stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. If you look at the history of some of the laws in our nations, particularly with state governments, there's actually specific laws that, if followed today, would break a lot of like Supreme Court rulings and stuff. But like technically, you can't run and be an atheist governor in the state of Texas because of a law that was made in like the 1800s. Right now, nobody would actually challenge that if it ever happened. But it's literally just never happened. Everybody that's run as governor for Texas has been a Christian since the foundation of the state. And that's been the case for pretty much every state in the union. And so I think right now there's like one representative in California that I think just identifies as like non-religious, or maybe he uses a humanist label. But other than that, you've got people who are varying levels of Christian, right? And obviously you got a lot of folks that have a God belief, but don't go to church or anything like that. And you see a lot of that amongst the liberal side. But somebody who's an outright atheist, that's a tough sell. I talk about my friend Gail Jordan, who tried to run in Tennessee as an atheist. And what happened to her? Well, her political opponents just picked up all the stuff that she talked bad about religion before and just used that in the ad campaigns against her. And there was, it was just so hard for her to win in a climate like that. So will somebody who's an outright atheist win in any major election in the next, decade? That's going to be tough. I think you probably have somebody who's secular, like John was saying. I think that's probably more likely, but using any label outside of that is going to make it more difficult, which is unfortunate because, we are a minority in this country. But yeah, we're just having to work with what we've got. Now, we have seen some Muslim representatives in Congress, which is really cool. So maybe we'll see the same for atheists. I don't know. But and you see the hate that some of those guys get just for having their beliefs. So it's difficult.
Yeah. At the very least, diversity is a good thing. The more diverse we are, the more we can talk about things in this climate. And maybe, just maybe, we can finally get a foot in the door even if it means that we're still looked at as the outsiders. I just want it to be at least, a little more fair for everyone. I can't tell you how hard it was when we fought, because I don't know if you heard about a news story that happened here in Arkansas a couple of years ago. I got involved, very involved, with our local government, and we spoke up and out against the state, straight up admitting that you could kick people out of their homes and fire them and just not give them any rights just for being gay or trans.
Yeah.
And our city won against the state. We ended up getting a ruling that stated that the state can no longer make those laws.
Yeah.
And that the cities only have that power.
Yeah, I wish we could make that universal. You know, that's just something that it seems obvious. But yeah, if you're an atheist and you're trying to adopt, or you're gay and you're trying to adopt, depending on where you're at, you can totally just be discriminated and not be allowed the rights if it's a religious adoption agency, which is really awful. But yeah, that's just kind of the reality we're living in. Someone's trying to call you there, John.
Yeah, because
but anyways, Skyler, it's a great question. Thanks for bringing it up with us. I'm glad we got to talk about it a little bit. Looking forward to hearing from you again sometime. You take care.
I appreciate.
Oh, I'm sorry. I got him dropped before he could finish his thought there. But yeah, it's.
Well, I wanted to say to Skyler, and that is that I don't think, one gets pushed into this thing of naming people, an atheist.
Mm-hmm.
I think one can simply say, I'm just not religious.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm just not religious. I don't include that in my thinking and how I go about the world in trying to do good or fix problems or associate with people. I don't include that. I'm not religious.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting, John, because we, in our spaces, we talk about the word atheist and why we use it and what exactly it means. And if you're someone that is secular and you don't choose to use that label, I mean, yeah, I think, again, you should be treated the same way as those of us who do choose to use that label. I think a lot of us use it because we want to make a point about it. Like, hey, we're not just not religious. We specifically don't believe in some of the stuff you're saying. It's almost kind of a, it's meaningful for some of us in that sense. But hey, like you said, if that's not the language you choose to use, that's fine too. You have every right to do it.
Yes, except the thing is, and I understand that, and I've had conversations about that. I'm not looking to be identified by the people who are atheists. Oh, you're part of us. I'm mostly interested in getting people to be thinking a little more critically, to be making choices that are not, imaginary world choices. To not be bringing an imaginary world into the world that we live in now, to try to figure things out and to try to do to make things better. I find it clouds the issue. It just clouds the issue.
Yeah, and that's a good point too. Yeah, like you said, I mean, it is interesting because if you're using that label, then a bunch of people are using that label, suddenly you can group a bunch of people who are very different and very distinct in many different ways, but who just share like a lack of belief in something. That's not something that has a whole lot of commonality to it. Now, here at the Atheist Community of Austin, we share a lot of the same issues and we're interested in some of the same issues. But yeah, it's not the same as saying like, oh, we're both Christians, so we both have, the same destiny, or we have the same scriptures that we're looking at. So there is kind of a distinction there. And I think that choice is valid, not to use that identity for yourself. But we got some more calls, some people that want to talk to you. So let's go ahead and go to the next one here. I want to talk to Zach, who's calling in from London. Zach, what is going on?
Yeah, hi, nice show. Just wanted to ask a question, because usually when atheists and religious people speak, when religious people state their beliefs, what usually follows from the atheists is that they want evidence for those beliefs. So I was just going to ask whether you thought or considered that, whether you considered a belief to be a claim.
Yeah, I'll go first on this one since John went first last time. A belief being a claim, yes. If you're claiming that something exists, for example, if you claim a belief that something exists, whether it be Bigfoot, aliens, God, I think it's natural to want evidence for that claim, right? The burden of proof relies on the person making the claim. Now, if we're talking about atheism in particular, most atheists that you talk to, we're not necessarily claiming that God doesn't exist, because you can't really do that, right? How do you prove that something doesn't exist? But you can say that you lack a belief in something, or you choose not to believe until you see evidence otherwise. So I think that's how a lot of people would frame that issue. But yes, in short, I do think that if you're going to claim something, yeah, the evidence, the burden of proof, that's going to be on you. But what do you think about that, John?
I agree.
All right. Well, there you go. Zach, what do you think about that?
So would you? Are you going by definition? Are you saying that the definition of a belief is a claim?
I don't know if the definition of a belief is a claim. I'd say I can't imagine a belief without some sort of claim. Can you imagine a belief that doesn't involve a claim?
Yeah, I mean, I don't like to go back and forth with definitions. But if, for example, if I said I believe you have $10 in your pocket, am I making the claim that you have $10 in your pocket?
Good question. Yeah, if you, and this goes back to like epistemology and stuff, right? Like if you believe you have, somebody else has $10 in your club, are you making the claim? Yeah, I'd have to say so, because you're making a statement about reality. Your belief is a reflection of reality, and so therefore, I would have to say you're making a claim about it. Yeah, that makes sense to me.
What if you substituted, I think you have $10 in your pocket? How does that change it for you?
I think it's still the same. I think there's a difference between saying I know you have $10 in your pocket. I would say that is a claim, whereas a belief is just the acceptance of something you think is true. It's not really a claim. That's how I look at it.
Maybe. I don't know. I think people have been studying these issues for a really long time, and there's just different ideas of what it means for knowledge and stuff. But John, you were going to say something, John. You were ready. What were you going to say?
No.
Okay.
I'm actually running the thing. I think that you have $10 in your pocket. I believe you have $10 in your pocket, and I know you have $10 in your pocket.
Or how about this? I think it's most probable that you have $10 in your pocket. What if you introduce probability? I think if you introduce probabilities, you're still, that's more making a bet, I guess. I don't know. It's very rare that I make claims where I say that I absolutely know something to be sure anymore, And so, yeah, I don't know. If I was to say, I think you have $10 in your pocket, that to me, that's almost the same as saying, I have reason to believe you have $10 in your pocket.
Yeah,
but maybe
I was going to ask what is your what point are you driving towards?
Yeah.
The point I'm driving towards is if we're going to be accused of not accused, but if we're going to be if atheists are going to say that we're making claims, then it's upon the atheist to prove that we're making claims, right? Because it's not. I don't see a belief to be a claim. So every time an atheist asks me for evidence, I'm always thinking, when did I make a claim? All I'm doing is stating my beliefs, right?
Well, if you say I believe that God exists, for example, if we want to go that far, then I would say that that's a claim, because again, you're describing reality, or at least something like reality in some way. And yeah, I don't know how you could separate that from a claim. Yeah.
I mean, it does sort of go with the next question is well, why?
Yeah.
Or how do you believe that? Or, I mean, a further a further explanation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Would an explanation be evidence? Would that be considered evidence?
Well, and I would say an argument isn't necessarily evidence. Like evidence and arguments might be two different things. You can make arguments about evidence, but an argument by itself may not be. But John was ready to jump the gun. I want to see what you had to say.
No, I mean, I would be interested in knowing if we were, sitting across, having a pint somewhere. I would say, oh, well, why is that? And then you would explain to me. And probably, as a matter of fact, I'm of the opinion that most of the things would have to be, well, I feel. You would be using the words feel and sort of subjective reasoning, and I would find it interesting. I mostly find this stuff interesting until people start, voting and insisting that I need to feel the same way you do or believe the same way you do. So, but I don't. I recognize it as to me, it's more whether you call it a claim and evidence, and nothing is going to sort itself out in sort of a trial type of setting. It's a discussion. It's a discussion.
Yeah, I would only add on to that, Zach, that if you were to say to me, I believe in God, then I kind of have like a choice in that. I could say whether I also believe or whether I disagree. That's kind of what prompts me. And so if I disagree, and if I can disagree with something, then that means you have to be making a claim. You have to be saying something is true. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to disagree about what you're saying. You know what I'm saying? It's not a value neutral statement. Like you are saying something about reality, about the world that we live in. So I'm still caught up on the fact that I think it would be a claim. Yeah.
Yeah, I just think there's a subtle difference between saying something is true and saying I believe something to be true. I think there is just a subtle difference there.
Can you believe something that isn't true, though? Can you actively believe something that wouldn't be true? Because I'm assuming all of the things you believe would be true, right? Or you would hope them to be.
Yeah, if I believed something to be true and I was proven wrong, then yes, I was believing in something that wasn't true.
Yeah.
When you say the word "I believe," I automatically assume that there's a tenuousness about it.
When I say I believe, what I am saying is, according to the definition, is I accept. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think accepting something is claiming something.
Well, if you're accepting a claim, though, right? Like, what's the difference between accepting a claim and you making the claim?
The difference is I'm the one receiving the claim. I'm not the one making the claim. That's the difference.
But if you accept it, what's the difference between you accepting a claim to be true, right, and you just believing in a claim? I mean, like I guess I'm trying to make so like you may not be saying it, right? Maybe you're not the one saying, "Oh, God is real." Maybe somebody else is saying God is real, and you say, "Yeah, I accept that to be true." What's the difference between you saying I accept that to be true and you making the claim? I'm kind of struggling to find the difference there.
Yeah, the difference is that there are two entities, right? So let's take, for example, a prophet, right? So a prophet is the one making the claim. Mm-hmm. The people that follow the prophet are the ones that are accepting the claim. So when atheists ask the followers for proof, we have to turn around and say, hold on, we're not the ones making the claim. We're just people who have accepted the claim.
But why would you?
What if I were to say to you, I believe we have tickets to the theater tonight. My first thing would be to say to the person, well, Okay, but do we have tickets to the theater tonight? Because there's a belief seems to have it's to me that word is very wishy-washy.
Sure, yeah, and there's a reason why you believe something, right? So you use this metaphor of the prophet and the followers, which I think is excellent, by the way, for what you're trying to communicate with us. But presumably those followers are believing for a reason. It could be a bad reason, or it could be a good reason, but there's, people don't believe things automatically. There is a process there, right? So like if you're a follower of a prophet and you are saying, yeah, I believe this to be true, presumably there's something why you would, and you would want to communicate that reason why to somebody else in order to convince somebody else of that belief to be being true, right?
That is true. I mean, the prophet example is just one. And many people sometimes just use their plain reasoning and come to the conclusion that there must be a creator, for example. So, for example, they look at the way the world works and the way nature works, and they'll say, wow, like, how do these mechanisms work? How does the system of nature work together? So there must be a fashioner. People come to the conclusion just through that reasoning. And I don't think it's, I don't know whether you think or believe reasoning is subjective or objective. That's another discussion.
Sure.
But people
we got to go ahead and get to our next calls here, unfortunately, Zach. But I do appreciate you calling in about this. It's important to have these kinds of discussions, figure out what we mean when we do use the word belief. So again, I do appreciate you're taking your time to watch the show. I hope you enjoy what you're seeing so far, and gonna have to let you go now, but thanks again for coming in. Yeah. What did you think about that, John?
I thought it's very interesting. I mean, very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So the takeaway I get from that conversation is I see his point in the sense that, like, yeah, you may not be the initial person making that claim, right? Like, I believe in what scientists have to say about climate change, right? I've done zero climate change, like original climate change research, right? I'm not going into any greenhouses and doing experiments or anything, right? I'm believing what the people in those institutions are telling me. But if I'm going out to somebody and saying, hey, I think climate change is real, to me, that sounds like I'm making the claim, right? Whether or not I'm, the data that I'm gathering from, I was the first person to make it, that doesn't matter to me, right? It seems like I would still be making the claim. I don't know. Do you follow with that? Am I making sense?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there we go. Let's go ahead and talk to our next caller here. I want to talk to Deec, who's calling in from South Carolina. Deec, what is happening?
Just a nice day right now, but my inquiry right now is, considering, John, that you are both an actor and a secular activist, if you were approached by a production that is intending to make a faith positive or faith promoting production, would you ever consider taking a role like that? And if so, where would you draw the line between accepting it as a paycheck or a potential conflict of personal or ethical interest?
Great question.
Yeah. I mean, I would not, on this particular subject, I would not want to be involved in a show that is proselytizing. And yet, when you do, let's say, George Bernard Shaw's St. Joan. I was in George Bernard Shaw's St. Joan. I played, I think it was Brother Martin. I can play that, and I can play it fully, and believe, to the extent as an actor believes in what I'm saying. so that you, the audience, can have an entire show placed in front of you and be able to sort through the different ideas of the show and what have you, and be a participant and someone who contributes to that event, then that's something in which we do all the time, because we play all sorts of different people in all sorts of different situations. But if it were simply a show that's just kind of a, Hallmark card kind of proselytizing show, then I just wouldn't be interested because the subject is not interesting enough to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So John, what if they say they're gonna make God's Not Dead 4, and they want to cast you instead of Kevin Sorbo for the typical atheist character in that movie? They offer you $1 million.
The money is not the issue. I know Kevin, and I know Kevin to be very religious, and he does these things because he wants to get that message out. I don't want to get that message out. There's nothing in the acting that would be challenging to me. I mean, particularly challenging, and it's not trying to present, like in the Shaw or something like that, very multiple points of view and stuff like that. That's not what it's trying to do. And in that respect, I'm not that interested.
Gotcha. Well, thanks for the. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, so a lot of it would have to do on basically the depth of the performance, rather, a less fully developed production would be less intriguing than obviously a one-sided. One reason why I bring this up is I have done some more studio and media-based artwork, and occasionally have been approached to do religious pieces, and usually kind of push those aside. But I figured there was a legitimate area of question between just naysaying anything religious versus just supporting somebody else, making them feel good by giving them something they want. But I definitely appreciate your response in there. I think that helps give me a little more to think about when approaching these types of issues.
Well, I mean, the fact is that you will become associated with what you do. It doesn't mean that because I brought up Shaw, I also did Man and Superman. We did the Don Juan section. I did not play the devil. I played the other voice. Okay, I played Jack Tanner. All right, Don Juan actually, and so I am arguing the other side, but it's so brilliantly written. And Shaw is presenting both sides of heaven and hell and what have you. Then one as an actor is involved in a artistic presentation, and it's of great value. But just something which you can begin to see within moments of where this is going, and is. I'm happily at the point where I don't need the money, and even if I did, when I did, I didn't get involved too much because I just go, there are other opportunities. So,
well, Deec, thanks.
I think you have hit it well on the head with the comment of whether it crosses the line to proselytism, and I thank you for your time and energy, and more than happy to let you go to the next caller.
Yeah, thank you, Deec. I appreciate it. Yeah, no, it's a great question. I didn't know you knew Kevin Sorbo. That's crazy. I saw Kevin Sorbo one time at a Comic-Con here in Texas. I didn't talk to him, but pretty wild. I would have to think about that too, because it is different if you're talking about I can appreciate Passion of the Christ. I can see a movie like that and see the intricacies and the technical skill that went into that movie and the writing and the development. I can view that differently from something that's trying to maybe sort of propagandize a worldview that I may not agree with or that I may find harmful. So yeah, I can see how it also might be difficult, especially someone in your position who takes these kinds of roles. I'm sure you have to kind of figure out case by case,
Well, when you consider that the character of Q is supposedly a god, then the whole notion of, not believing in gods comes up, but that's not what the event really is. I mean, that's not what it's about. I mean, I am the role that I'm playing, and that is to ask humans, do you deserve to be out here?
Yeah.
Or to say, another episode was, what is the responsibility that one has in terms of suicide? And, so it becomes other issues. But if it's only about trying to plug a particular point of view, in this case, a very religious point of view, then I'd go, no, I'm not interested.
Yeah. Well, great answer for that. Let's go ahead and go to our next call here. Now, this one looks like it might be a doozy, John. I hope you're ready for this. Ransom from California. You are live calling into Truth Wanted. What's going on?
Hey, Dan, great to see you again. And John, unfortunately, you almost took my joke away from me right before the call because I didn't even know you were secular. I just thought you were God.
All right, I see. Yeah, he's just putting it out there right here. All right, well, Ransom, before you speak, I just want to read what the call screener wrote for me here. And it says, you believe that there is some evidence for ancient advanced civilizations, and you think you can explain that evidence. Is that right?
Yep, I'm on, bro.
Okay, well, here's your chance.
Oh no, I had to tell my boss I'd be out for a second. But I've got 2 points of evidence that I want to talk about, and then the line that I draw. The first one is the first one that I saw when I was 7 was the Madonna portrait. Okay. And in the upper right corner of the Madonna portrait, there is something that is really freaking weird looking that is apparent. It looks like several of the flying saucers and spaceships that we've seen. Conspiracy theories of. Most of them turn out to be hoaxes, and the ones that don't turn out to be hoaxes are inconclusive. Okay. But that picture right there, for its age, strikes me as something out of.
Hold on, wait. Why does a painting convince you that? What are we saying? Aliens? Is that what you're saying? Like aliens are real because somebody put a weird thing in a painting?
Well, it's just something that I don't think they would have had a concept of at the time. It's not just the fact that it's in a painting. It's from the age of the painting.
Do you know when the Madonna painting was made?
Wasn't it mid 1700s?
Look, I can Google this right now. Madonna. Well, I mean, there's
you got me.
Actually, I'm not even sure. But the art of the Madonna, I mean, that goes back centuries. But like, look, I can tell you right now, just preemptively, someone who's really looked into this stuff, lots of civilizations from thousands of years back have had concepts of things that are outside of our world, right? And that's manifested in different ways. There's people out there that argue, if you look at the Bible, specifically in the book of Ezekiel, that Ezekiel is talking about a UFO because he's talking about like a chariot that's riding through the sky. So I would say this concept.
Oh, I fell down that rabbit hole a couple of times.
Yeah. So like, look, the Bible, okay, is way older than any Madonna paintings, right? Any book in the Bible, actually. But like, just because I'm assuming a Renaissance artist or something has a weird thing in the background, I mean, that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything.
The second one I wanted to point out is the petroglyphs in Legend Rock in Wyoming. And these things are, they look extremely similar to the Nazca lines. And I found out later that the astronaut that was painted on that, or that was carved in that mosaic, that was made much later during a renovation. But the petroglyphs, they were untouched until they were discovered. And when they were discovered, they had pictures of people who were in what seemed to be spacesuits with almost like some weird type of other body inside their belly.
Okay, so how do we know? Well, there's a couple things here. How do we know that we're not misinterpreting what these artists are making? But also, how do we know that people just aren't creative beings and are able to kind of make stuff up without, looking at something real? I mean, if aliens visited ancient civilizations, right, is the best evidence we're going to have for that some petroglyphs? I think that we would have some other things to corroborate that, right?
It's a jumping off point for me, and I don't want to bring up like everything, and you caught me at a disadvantage because I'm at the restaurant and I don't have the computer in front of me today.
Okay.
So I can't be pulling stuff up as we talk this time. But no, what I'm thinking is that based on the time and based on the fact that nearly everything, not necessarily everything we know, but nearly everything we have that is recreational is derived from something that is factual, or that was a necessity. Sorry. Everything we have that's recreational is derived from necessity. So I don't
know what that means exactly, but like just because we make something doesn't mean that it exists in reality. I can draw you a unicorn right now, and we can look all over the earth, and that doesn't mean unicorns are real. I think humans have the ability to make things up, and we put it in art sometimes. And again, that's just one interpretation of what we're looking at when we're looking at petroglyphs. I think, again, if you wanted to make the case that aliens sort of intersected with ancient civilizations, I think you got to do better than some art. I think you have to make a stronger case. But I don't know. What do you think about this, John?
Dan, I think you're handling this far better than I would.
Okay. Well, I don't know. Ransom, you got any other thoughts here?
I think that's going to do it. I just want, I'm basically calling to bullshit with John for a little bit, and I had this idea that I was kicking around, and I figured this would be a nice time to call in with it.
All right. Well, hopefully, we got your bullshit, and now we've sent you our bullshit.
Are you in?
All right. Well, you guys have an amazing show. Much love and take care.
All right, you too. I guess he didn't quite hear it at the end there, but yeah, what were you going to make the point with that? I'm curious.
I'm just interested to know what restaurant is serving right now in California.
Okay. Well, I mean, look, I imagine there's a lot of restaurants in California that people are having that same exact conversation in, like right now, right?
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, it gotta be. Yeah, probably here in Austin too, now that we're talking about it. But let's go ahead and get to our next caller here as we're getting towards the tail end of the show. I want to talk to Phil, who's calling in from DC. Phil, what's going on?
Hey, so, I liked listening to your last caller because I actually grew up, my parents believed that aliens came to Earth, and my mom and stepdad actually met at an Edgar Cayce learning center, and Edgar Cayce is a big New Age religious figure. And the thing that gets me about the aliens is, there's clear carbon dating evidence, that really places the age of the pyramids, but a lot of those allegations. Really, they say it happened a few thousand years earlier. I think that this group even paid for a study to do carbon dating, and they were disproven by the results of this study, but they continued to, cling to this belief. So that's just a little coincidence. I actually wanted to call in to comment on the utility of religion, I think, in how we deal with the human condition, and especially with death. It seems like a great commonality with religions across the world is the reality of death and the kind of absurdity of life that stems from our short existence on this earth. And I wonder, Mr. Delancey, what you think about acting and doing a
Oh no, Phil, we lost you there at the end. No, you were just about to get to the meat of your question. No, that's so awful. Okay, we're going to put you back in the queue, Phil. We're going to see if we can get you back on the air, because you were like right about to ask what you wanted to ask. That is so unsatisfying. That is the most unsatisfying call. I mean, people have dropped before, but that's like the worst I think that's ever happened. Oh my goodness. Well, Phil, we'll keep you back on the line if you want to talk. Until then, let's go ahead and talk to our next person here. I want to talk to Ben calling in from Texas. What's going on, Ben?
Hey, you know what's going on. What's good, Dan? Mr. Lancie, Dan, it's been a great show so far. Hopefully this call will be a little more satisfying than the last one. But I'm wondering if you guys are familiar with Project Blitz.
That sounds really familiar, but if you asked me what it was, I couldn't tell you.
It's the Christians' attempt to stack the halls of power with people of faith. So they're rushing the gates.
Yes. Was this was in that documentary that was on Netflix recently, right?
The Family.
Yeah, The Family. Yeah. Is that what you're talking about, Ben?
Sure. So I'm wondering what you guys think about this. To me, it's horrifying, and I'm not sure what you guys think of how we can go about counteracting this push, this very overt Christian dominionism.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I mean, I really agree with you. I don't know why there's a need for that. Not only must I believe, but I must believe what you believe, and or you must believe what I believe. I mean, it's really unfortunate. The best way I see to counteract it is to just call it out for what it is, and to show the hypocrisy and the need for power and how it's abused in many instances. It's so unreligious in a way. It's so unspiritual. I had a really unusual experience. A friend of mine, his mother, who was quite ill, and I don't know, she was 98 years old or something like that. She was in the hospital. He asked me to go and see her. He was out of town. She had to be taken to the hospital quickly and what have you. So I went there, and he was on his way on a plane to be there the next day. She thought of me as being the priest that had come to see her. And I thought, oh my gosh, how ironic. She did not recognize me. She didn't know who I was. And she thought that I was the priest. So I sat there with her, and she and I recited the Lord's Prayer, and we talked about other things. And I played in real life the priest.
Oh, wow.
And that is what I think is the best of what religion has to do. Those of us who are atheists or agnostic or secular, we don't really have anything to offer people who are dying. We can't come up with, and you're going to go here and you're going to see your friends and family and everything. It's a very stressful time, and we have not come up with any sort of anything about that. I have in my own belief system, as it were, my own senses, is that I'm on a wheel. It's the wheel of life. I've done what I was intended to do, and now I have to relinquish that, and my atoms go off. And it's a little, but it's kind of in the same world, but it isn't as codified as the religious world has to offer. Mm-hmm. But it has nothing to do with power. It has nothing to do with power. She and I sat there. I held her hand, and for the half an hour that I was there, I tried to give her as much solace as I could, and that's what I think is the best part of religion. And then I see all this other stuff, which is just nonsense and hypocrisy and lying and money and all these things which should be anathema to people who are truly religious, who I respect. But so I think that in the end, if we keep on saying, listen, there's a difference between the Jerry Falwells and the people who are actually trying to do something. There's a huge difference between them. You don't want to go over there because they're going to politicize you. So that's nice.
Yeah. So Ben, talking about Project Blitz specifically, and just talking about Christian dominionism, I think is really fascinating, because when people make common criticisms about religion and stuff, they're really talking about, like John was saying, like the Jerry Falwell types, the ones who are making money and who are just kind of using it all for show. But there is another side of this, kind of movement that a lot of people don't talk about, and that is like the dominionist movement. These are groups of Christians who want to ascertain political power, and they straight up write it out. There's a couple of different, obviously they tend to be on the Republican side. Actually, I don't know any of them that aren't, but like they are. I'm trying to remember the name of the guy who released this document a couple of years ago and got a lot of fire for it, because it was basically a Christian document on how to handle a Christian state and what to do with people who would not submit to that Christian state. And of course, he was really ostracized for it, but that's what a lot of these people believe in secret. And if you look in the sort of Oregon area in particular, not Portland, but like everywhere outside of that, and kind of, on that coast, you see these rural communities where they have these like Christian militia movements. And these are people who are militias. They're people with guns, kind of acting as, a pseudo military force, who do believe that, this is the way that they want to do things. And you're seeing some tension with them right now, of course, with the recent protests and stuff going on up there. Some of those guys are just kind of stepping into the scene, and they want to make a fuss too. So it does bother me. I think if violence comes out, and things kind of escalate, especially recently with these protests, I could see these militia groups definitely being a part of the problem there. But yeah, it's no surprise to me that people are voted in and are given these kind of political favors from these churches and stuff, who are some of their biggest donors, because we can't look at that. We have no access to a lot of these records because churches don't have the same kinds of regulations that other kinds of businesses or even nonprofits have to do. So it's unfortunate, and I wish it wasn't a thing, but it definitely is. So. What do you think,
it's
Ben?
Terrifying.
Yeah.
When you think you have a mandate from God, you can do things like manifest, quote unquote, manifest destiny, on a whole continent. You can have inquisitions. You can have crusades. I mean, there's no limit to the amount of damage you can do in the name of God when you claim, the prophet told you could do it.
Yes, and also it can be used against you. The fact of the matter is that the tide then turns, and all the things that you were doing that you feel justified in doing can also be done to you. And of course, at that point, everybody, they will be squealing like, "Oh, I'm a victim. But that's the reason why it's, when there are discussions about separation of church and state, understand something. You don't want. This could be turned against you. What if all of a sudden the predominant religion is not your religion?
Yep.
So it's good for everyone to adopt these rules that have been set up. You can have any religion that you want, but you cannot put it into the state. Okay, there has to be a separation. That's going to help you now. It'll help somebody else later. So I agree with you. Everything has become very polarized without the appreciation that all of this can be used against you.
Yeah, Totally. Well, Ben, that was a great call. Thanks for talking to us about that. I wish you well the rest of your night, and you have a good one. Yeah, really scary stuff. It seems like you were saying, these beliefs, they used to be private for a lot of people. Now they matter to people more than ever. And they seem to indicate certain voting patterns as well. And I wish we could go back to a time where we could say, none of this matters anymore. But it totally does. And it doesn't look like it's going to change in the future. So might as well talk about it. Might as well see what we can make from it. And if we have to make compromises, but, see where we can go. I think we got time, John, for one more call. You up for one more call before we wrap things up?
Absolutely.
All right, let's do it. I want to talk to Rob calling in from New Jersey. Rob, what's going on?
Hi, Dan, and hi, John. Nice to get to talk to you again. We know each other. I'm the writer for Skeptical Inquirer who interviewed you before your talk at SciCon.
Oh, yeah.
And I was wondering...
Nice.
At the present...
Nice talking to you again.
Hi, I'm glad to see you're looking good. I was wondering, at the talk, you mentioned a fantastic sounding video series that sounded something like God's Blunders, and I was wondering, what's the status of that?
There were two things that I talked about at the time. One having to do with not so intelligent design, which was simply a science project, mostly for kids, which talked about intelligent design and how, in fact, that intelligent design, it was to show how kids that intelligent design is sort of a pseudoscience. And it was to use the human body to say, well, if this is designed, this is not really well designed. And also a lot of other, species and, have design elements which are pretty terrible. That was one project. That project, I'm still having real trouble getting off the ground. As a matter of fact, I spoke to one of the illustrators today. The other project I was able to get off the ground, and that is that I was very interested in the 2005 Dover Intelligent Design Trial, where a group of Christian fundamentalists essentially took over the school board in Dover, Pennsylvania, attempted to throw out the 9th grade science book because it mentioned evolution, and to bring in instead the book of Pandas and People, which is about intelligent design. The reason that I found it so interesting is because I had gone ahead, as I said in the beginning of the program, I had Ed Asner and I had gone around the country with the transcripts of the Scopes monkey trial. Well, here was the next big trial about this particular subject. The difference between the Scopes monkey trial and the Dover trial is that in the Scopes trial, it lasted only 6 days. And that's because Judge Ralston did not want to have any evidence presented about evolution. He didn't want this to become a science, a trial about science or anything like that. It was just simply whether Scopes had actually opened the book to a chapter that actually had the chapter on evolution, and did he teach evolution? That's all he wanted to talk about, and that was the end of the story. But in Dover, Judge Jones said, no, I want to hear it all. Let's talk about evolution. What is that? Let's talk about intelligent design. What is that? Let's discover whether, in fact, there was chicanery when the school board took over, and they've tried to bring this book in, the book in, and on and on and on. That trial lasted 40 days, and my writing partner, Kristen Trevor, and I created a script, and we did the script. We wrote the script, and we performed the script actually at a Star Trek convention. I know this is sort of strange, but it was for the Star Trek cruise that had 3,000 people, and I'm sure that they thought that they were going to see a play about Romulans and and whatever. And instead, they saw a play about the Dover intelligent design trial. And I was going to immediately come back. This was the 1st of March, just 3-4 months ago. I was going to come back and go into a studio and record it, and then give it away, give it to the world so that they could understand what this issue was. And then the COVID thing happened.
Another thing COVID has ruined. That sucks. Yeah. I would want to see that. That sounds pretty awesome. But yeah, I didn't know you were even involved in projects like that, John. I'll be honest. When I was looking at and doing research for this show and stuff in particular, I found your speeches to be pretty compelling, and I had no idea it tied so much to your career as an actor. So that props to you. That's really awesome that you at least are attempting to do projects like that.
Well, it's a very worthy project because what we did is that we followed a little bit the same notion that was done in the Scopes thing. Nobody, except for the narrator in the intelligent design trial that we wrote, except for the narrator, every other character who are real people who are alive today were all quotes. Everything is a quote. And so you see what the school board meetings were like, but we gleaned all of that from all hundreds of newspaper articles where people are quoted. We all, of course, the trial testimony where there are these explanations about intelligent design. Intelligent design is in fact not new; it's been around for hundreds and centuries. But it's been around for a very long time. And all of that is actual, real trial transcript and really what people said, so that an audience, when they began to watch it, they began to lose the sense that that I'm proselytizing, and they actually hear it. They hear it from the people who are religious. They hear it from the people who believe it, who don't believe it, blah, 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 blah. And they can come to an understanding. And what was terrific is that we would have talkbacks at the end. We did 2 shows, 1,500 people in the audience at a time. And then there was a talkback, and there was one person who, got up, and a very religious person, and she had her 3 or 4 people there. And you said that you can't be a scientist and be religious and stuff like that. I never said a word in response. It was other people who are religious in the audience who said, no, that's not what he is saying.
Yeah.
Did you not understand? That's not what it said. That's not what the trial was about. And what was so good is that it goes back to my ultimate thing is stay in your own lane.
Stay in your lane.
If you want to talk about that God created everything, you have a church in which you can do that. If you want to talk about how amoebas came out and the cell division and all the things that frankly are going to save us, hopefully, with this COVID thing, we have scientific institutions that deal with that. Let's not merge these things. That's why, quite frankly, we have 165,000 deaths in this country right now because people have not let those who handle disease deal with that. And we have politicized it with all this, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so everybody stay in their own lane. The kids can come and learn what the mechanism of evolution is, which has been tested beyond. It is the most tested theory that we have. And theory, it's not the word theory the way it's used in the lay world. It's a particular world that's used, way. It's a word that's used in the scientific world, which means an umbrella which under which there can be all sorts of scientific facts that are unified. That's what theory means. So all of those things I think are really important, and that's why I ended up writing a play about it, so that people can hear it. You know, many people, myself included, there's a marvelous explainers. Just what is science? Well, science is a way of thinking. It's just a way of thinking. And where it has to be proven, and it has to be repeatable, and it has to be, on and on and on and on, so that at the end of the day, you kind of go, oh, well, you know what, this creates a fact that we can rely on. And so a lot of people get very, hair on fire about these things. And this play, this 90-minute play, allowed the audience to begin to sit back and kind of go, oh, I had no idea. Now I understand. I don't feel as fearful about it. I'm not going, Lancie isn't going to try to change my religious views. He's just simply saying, keep them separate.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your answer there, John. And Rob, thank you so much for calling in with your question. Cool to have somebody from the Skeptical Inquirer, calling in. I don't think that's ever happened before, so that's kind of cool. But we are getting to the wrapping up stage here on Truth Wanted. I want to give a special thanks again, John, for being on the program. Really loved having you on here.
Thank you. I really enjoyed being on it, and I applaud you with what you're doing. I think it's really important. It's important not to make fun of people, but it's also important to say to people, hey, listen, let's try to use our brain here. Let's try to think through things.
That's the goal. That's the goal, baby. Well, we're about to wrap things up, but stick around if you're watching live, because I'm about to go on Discord to answer some of your guys' questions. As you guys know, regular watchers, we do a little Discord after show, and so you can find me on there if you want to hang out for a sec. But if you want to support this show, again, patreon.com is a good way to do it. We also have some awesome merchandise that you can get for Truth Wanted. Hey, what do you guys think of doing Pico t-shirts? Pico's my cat, John, and who makes appearances sometimes. But maybe we should do that. I've been thinking about that, maybe adding to more of the merch. I don't know. We'll see. Another way you can support the show is through YouTube membership. If you become a member on YouTube, you get little emojis and stuff. It's pretty fun. It's just another way to help make this show happen every week. If you want to follow me on Twitter, you can. It's at ObjectivelyDan. You can also email me on truth@atheist-community.org. John, where can people find you at if they want to know what you're up to?
Oh, well, I don't know. I mean, I have a website. I guess they can go there.
Okay. Yeah, you didn't. So I found your Twitter, and it looked like it hadn't been updated in a while. You're not much of a social media guy, huh?
I'm not much of a social media guy, but my son, one of my sons, is figuring out all sorts of things to do. So I will be much more involved.
Cool. That'd be cool to see. And last but not least, of course, I have to thank the wonderful, awesome, fantastic crew of Truth Wanted that helps make this program possible. He's got the TARDIS going on. Oh, look at that. He's got the Star Trek thing. Oh, look at that. That's just fun. Well, thanks again, everybody, for watching this program. John, thanks so much again. Any words of wisdom to give to our audience before we close out tonight?
Vote.
I like it. One word, that's all you need. Vote. Well, as always, I'm Objectively Dan. Remember to always keep wanting the truth, and I'll see you next time.
What are we doing, man? What are we doing?
No, you're done.